Abigail. What are we talking about today?
Oh, we're going to talk about the true Halloween horror story, Candy. And what it does to our children, our vampire children. Yeah, so, with Halloween coming up, we thought we would take a look at just some stories around Halloween. I have a funny one I wanted to share with you guys. It's actually a really sweet story where my children wanted to kill each other over some candy.
Now that does sound like a true horror story.
So sweet, right? Right. Just a day in the life.
Hi, I'm El Quad. I'm in Hong Kong, and I'm your host of the Hand in Hand Parenting podcast. At Hand in Hand, we decode children's difficult behaviors, and we problem solve common parenting challenges one by one.
And I'm Abigail Wald. I'm a certified Hand in Hand parenting instructor here in Los Angeles. And every week, Al and I are going to share with you a real story from a parent just like you, just like us. Sometimes it'll be our stories and sometimes it'll be yours or your friends or your neighbors. And looking at the real stuff that actually goes down on, the day-to-day in our homes and families. And, we want to take a look at what are the traditional parenting methods and what people often tell us to do and ways that we often handle these situations. And then we also want to take a look at ways that hand-in-hand parenting, some of the tools there, and see what it would look like to use those tools and just share them with you and see if they resonate at all and if you want to try them. And we'd love to hear back from you guys. If you do implement any of these, how they work. We're really interested in that back and forth discussion. So
thanks, Abigail.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think you might need to set this scene. We're talking about Halloween. Yes. In England, where I'm from in Halloween, it's cold and freezing and spooky as anything. Is it like that in California? I thought you were in the land of the sun.
In California, no, it is not. It's dry and deserty usually, and pretty warm and balmy.
Okay, that doesn't sound like Halloween to me. But.
No, we just call it Halloween like we call it Christmas, and that's it. So this happened, this particular story happened about 2 years ago when my kids were, I would say like maybe 7 and 9, somewhere around that, or 7 and 8 probably actually. Sorry. Sometimes they're 1 year apart, sometimes they're 2. I can't tell. Like 18 months. It's very confusing. And so they had both gone trick-or-treating. And they both every year literally have worn the same costume. This is really because I'm not very creative in this particular area. And they don't seem to care. They just want the candy. So they both have worn the same costume every year as each other. And they walk up to the same exact houses, right? And I'm watching. And they get home. And when we get home, they lay out their candy. And
how much candy are we talking? Like, how much do they get?
Well, that depends which child you are. So if you're my younger son, you got maybe like 15 to 20 pieces, maybe 25. And if you're my older son, you somehow got 50. I don't know how he does it.
He's a candy attractor.
Yeah, he's like a candy attractor. They came home and they started laying them out across the floor. So just imagine this. My younger son is like laying it out and he gets to about like 2 feet. Of like a train track. And you can see what's coming here, right? My older son gets to 2 feet and 3 feet and 4 feet. And I'm thinking, oh no, right? And that's like what you're thinking, right? Like, what are you thinking in that moment as a parent?
Yeah, your heart is plummeting into your stomach because you know what's coming, right?
You know what's coming. And it's like you feel bad, but then you also feel bad for yourself because you're like,
I got to deal with this.
No,
this is my own Halloween nightmare.
Right? I'd rather have Freddy Krueger. So I go and I'm looking at this and I'm starting to feel that knot in my chest, right? And my younger son just starts screaming and bawling and screaming at the older kid. And he's like, you have to give me your $1,000 bar, $100,000 bar, whatever that thing is. And my older son is like, I am not giving it to you. And he's like absconding with it, quite literally. Like,
stuffing it up his skeleton t-shirt.
Yes, totally. And he's looking at me and he's like, you are not going to do this. You're not going to make me give it, right?
So there was just one of these bars, and they both won.
Oh, I think my older son probably had like 4 of them, but the younger son didn't have any. And and it wasn't just that bar, right? It was just everything. It was so like massively unfair.
I mean, this is like completely unjust.
It is.
This
it's
can be misallowance. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's like kind of the thing, right? So I just stayed there and I thought, okay, well, what are the things that I used to do in those kinds of situations, right? Before I learned hand-in-hand tools, I would say, like
demand that it be fair. Okay, well, you have 4, so clearly your brother needs 2. That's
right.
Fair. Yeah,
right. Exactly, right.
I default to fair.
Right, to this enforced fairness, which actually isn't that fair, really. You know what I mean? Because then it's like, now I am the arbiter, so that causes all sorts of bad feelings, right? Mm-hmm. And he actually did get more fair and square. Like, it's not fair he got more, but he got more. Like, that's the reality, right? Like, we don't
life
say that,
is not fair that he got 4. Yeah, but he did, and it's not his fault.
Yeah, I mean, you can't be like, hey, listen, you ran faster on the football. So, like, why don't you give some of those meters to him? Some of those yards to him. You can't do that, right? Yeah. Can you tell I don't play football? I'm like, meters, yards, like
I have
feet.
no idea what you're talking about. Are you talking about soccer? Are you talking about
cubic volume? I don't know. Oh. So I say...
Just get on with the Halloween story, okay?
So I say... instead, I'm resisting the urge to make it fair, right? And I look at my older son and I say, no, don't worry about it. I got it, right? You just keep your candy. And I go to the younger son and I do what we call stay listening in hand-in-hand parenting, which is where it's really interesting. You actually decide that your job is not to fix the problem, but to really just be there with your child while they're having the problem, which it's interesting because before you totally understand this technique, it can almost feel cruel to some people, right? Like, why am I just going to be there? But it's actually this incredibly healing, beautiful experience to trust in a child's ability to overcome adversity, right? And so there's a lot of reasons that we do this because it's actually incredibly kind to just listen to somebody and not try to step in, because very often these hurts are actually like reflections of other things. Like he often feels like life is unfair and like his older brother wins.
He's the little one.
Things.
Yeah.
He's the younger one. Yeah. I just have the 2. And so it's like he feels like, oh, my older brother is always better and faster in this. And, so this was like an incredible opportunity to unpack some of that through this Halloween.
So you mean up until this point that there could have been things or times when he had felt that, but instead of voicing it or, letting it out, he just kind of stuffed it down there and just got a bit annoyed by it, but then carried on.
Yeah, or punched his brother in the face. But yes.
Well, there's always punching.
There's always punching. No, yeah. I mean, most of the time, I think, these little hurts kind of accrue, right? And there isn't always a great time. And so, there's this idea that kids will sometimes pick what, we call like a broken cookie pretext, right? Or in this case, a lack of $100,000 bar pretext, right? Which is
it was his reason.
Yeah, they like pick something that will kind of rip that scab off so they can heal themselves, because children are naturally good and they want to be connected and they want to feel good. And when they can get rid of the hurt, they return to that good state, right?
Well, wait, I mean, how did it look like? So you're in your living room with your candy laid out and you say, yeah, I'm sorry.
Right. So these are like really nice words, but let me tell you what it looked like. What it looked like was my older son absconding and still happily counting his candy while my younger son, right, laid down with me on the couch like wailing and flailing and hitting his arms about and sobbing about how life was unfair and that it was so unfair and that I better go get that candy from his brother. And I really just listened to him and I really cared. Like, I just kept saying, I hear you, babe. I get it.
You put yourself in his position. You saw through his little 8-year-old eyes or however.
And I really cared. Like, it would feel awful. You know, I could completely understand. And so I wasn't just sitting there like, yeah. You know, I was like, yeah, I get it. Like, but I also wasn't avoiding the truth. I said, you did. I know. Same costume. You went to the same. I don't know how it happened either. I know. I don't know. I mean, we can wonder together why if you like. I don't know. You know, and I probably, it's been a while, but I probably tried to crack a joke like, you know, maybe he's got that special smile or did he do a dance or, you know, which I think would have been, you know, grandly rebuffed, let me just say. But what I definitely do remember is I said to him, I just kept listening and he just kept crying. And he said, I don't have what I need. And I said, well, you have a home and you have me, but I don't have $100,000 bar. And I said, no, you definitely don't have $100,000 bar. And I kept repeating to him, but, you know, I'm glad you have me and I'm glad you have love and I'm glad you have a home. And you definitely don't have $100,000 bar right now.
And I think it's easy for us to, there's two things that I think that I would have felt in that situation. One is, oh, it's just a candy bar. Like, come on, you know.
Yeah.
The other thing is, okay, you do have everything you need. This is not a life or death kind of situation, you know. Actually, it's not getting caught up in that emotion that they have about it, right? I mean, It was so nice that you focus in on those things that he does have. He has the house, he has you. And this, in the grand scheme of things, is not that important. You know, you don't have to rush in and fix a candy bar. Yeah, that's kind of, I feel that is quite nice for him to see that. You know, that he can feel that from you. Okay, I get that you're having a hard time, but, you know, I'm here and I'm calm for you instead almost. It's a modeling of what might happen when he's bigger, right, that he'll default to, which is, that feels nice, but hard, but nice.
Yeah, I mean, and to be clear, like, I definitely wasn't saying it to say,
no,
like, you know, the candy bar isn't important, dude, you've got a home, right?
Yes.
But I was trying to subtly let him know you are safe, you are loved. I know it feels right now like you don't have the things you need, but I want you to know that there's all this love here and you do have a home and you do have the things that you need and you don't have this thing that you want. And I really hear how hard that is, right? So it's a little bit of, yes, that adult perspective, but without trying to take away his feeling. And I think that's the really tricky point, right? It's like, how do you bring...
turning into a teacher, you know?
Yeah, like how do you bring your adult awareness and yet still say yes to their perspective, right? So I said all that and, you know, he just kept crying and I kept being okay with the fact that he was crying. And my older son was quite curious as to why I actually hadn't come over and taken his $100,000 route. Like he was now feeling pretty good that like he felt safe because no one was taking it from him, right? So his younger brother's feelings didn't have to change his reality, which I think is also a really important lesson. Like, if he wants to choose, that's a different matter, right? But it's not going to help him learn to share if I go over and grab it because his younger brother is sad. Like, that's just going to make him build resentment towards his younger brother.
Well, and
which is what I used to do, right? And me.
Yeah, straight away you're setting sides up, really, and you're saying, aren't you? Listen, you got to take this. Like, I'm taking the younger one's side. He needs this candy, you know.
Yes. And we do that all the time, right? I mean, I think, there's back to so many times I'm sure I've absolutely done that. And in this moment, I was able to have the presence of mind to like remember the big picture and that's the other thing, that you bring up, which I think is so important, right? Is not getting caught up in our children's emergencies or dare I say our own.
I mean, I find that really hard. I want to solve it. I want to get on. Partly, it's because I think I have a lot of baggage around, wow, you had a really good night. Like, is this how it's going to end? Let's not. That we bring a lot of our own selves to it as well.
Yes.
And it can be hard to not jump into that, okay, this is a quick fix way to maintain the calm or,
we're all going to have fun. This was a fun night. Just give him that candy so he can be happy.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Rather than demand, or you could just be like, guys, just be quiet, right? This is not how we're going to end our night, which is not how you want to end your night.
Right. Yes.
It's the polar opposite of what you're striving for.
Right. And so I was able to stay with him and I listened to him, and about, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes into it, he suddenly, and it's so beautiful. If you really ride a child's feelings and you've built trust with a child, at first, sometimes when you haven't built it yet, these tantrums can go on for quite some time, right? But once you've built this trust, it usually doesn't last long. Like 15 minutes is actually like an incredibly long one
and it can feel a lot longer in the moment,
right? Like 3.9 light years. So he was crying, and all of a sudden he goes, "Do you know how jellyfish eat clams?" And I was like, "What?"
And wait, is there some spirit that's overtaken my child on Halloween?
No, I love it because you can see his prefrontal cortex of his brain come back on, right? Like he's been flooded in this limbic system of survival, fight and flight, right? Like if I don't have the $100,000 bar, I'm going to die is what it felt like, right? Mm-hmm. He's got no upper brain with which to deal or solve any problems. Mm-hmm. And after he gets out all the feelings and he feels safe again and he knows that he's loved, and mind you, he still does not have a $100,000 bar, right? Mm. Then he goes, all of a sudden the brain comes back on with this new information that he's assimilated, right? And now he's in a confident space. And he says, do you know how jellyfish eat clams? And I say, no, I don't. And I sense, here's an opening. He's offering connection, right? I'm going to come in. And so now I start to use this other tool that we have called play listening. And I say, how does it work? And he says, well, clams are bivalves. Right? And by the way, I don't even know. I've never actually bothered to look this up, so I don't even know if jellyfish actually do eat clams. But this is what his
I've never even heard the term bivalves.
Right? I know. So he tells me all about the bivalves that they've been learning about. And he says, they surround the clam, and then they use their suction cup things to suck onto the clam, and then they pry it open, and then they take out the tender meat inside. And I say, okay. And I realize I'm going to try now to go in and see if he'll let me play, right? Is he ready for that kind of connection? Are we past the super hard part, right?
So you said earlier you may have tried to joke with him and that would have been rebuffed.
That's right.
But now you're feeling you're in a different place.
Exactly, because he's gotten all that yuck out. Exactly. Right. And so now he's kind of inviting me back in, like it's like cracking a door,
Right.
And I see that little light come through, and I go in and I follow it very gently, right? I'm looking for his joy. I'm looking for his giggle. I'm looking for that sparkle in his eye. I'm not trying to entertain him. I'm just letting him know I see that sparkle and I meet you there, right? Mm. So I say, is it like this? And I try to suction cup him and pry him apart and eat his little belly. And he says, no, they're blind, right? So then I close my eyes and I fumble about, and then I find him in the dark and I pry his little legs. He curls up in a ball and I pry him open and I nibble on his belly. And this became what we called Jellyfish Attack. And it became our special time for weeks, right?
This
special
game.
Time being, yeah, and special time is another tool that we have about a way to sort of play with your child in a child-led way that we can talk about another day. But Yeah, so we played actually for that, in that moment was the first time we ever played it. We played it for like 15 minutes. It had come very naturally, and we were both laughing hysterically on the sofa. And of course, now it's the older kid who's jealous. Like, hey, how come this crying fest turned into so much fun? Like, hey, you know.
Now those candy bars don't look so alluring.
Right, exactly, because connection is always the very best candy bar in the world, right?
Yay!
And so at the end of this whole story, he hops off the sofa and he's totally fine and happy with himself, right? Now, we didn't change the amount of candy he had. Like, nothing in the outside world changed, but he changed. He was more resilient. He knew he could handle the situation. He was totally happy with himself. And then older brother comes by and he goes, hey, Arthur, you know, this really isn't that fair. Would you like a $100,000 bar?
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yes,
you like go into the closet and go, yes, yes.
I know, right? It totally could have not turned out that way.
I mean, that does. I see that often in our house as well. I get so caught up in the screams and the cries, you know. It does something to me emotionally. But I can see, you know, if it's the little one who's upset, I can see the older one just carrying on happily with the colouring, with the pen that she was using that upset the little one or whatever. And for some reason it doesn't seem to. They don't seem so emotionally drawn by it. And to me that offers a bit of comfort, because I feel like, oh, the cries are affecting me in some way, but it isn't affecting everyone in that same way. And then often I find that given that moment, without any forcing, without any coercion, she'll say, hey, I'm kind of done with this. Do you want it? Or, you know, actually you can have it. And it's sometimes I feel like I'm quite quick to try and jump in and control something that may not even need controlling. It's just that maybe they're working at a bit of a different pace, but they understand what's going on. They know implicitly what fairness is.
Yeah, I think that's 100% true. And I think that children are actually innately very fair creatures. And I think that when they're not being fair, it's because some hurt has lodged in them and they're trying to make up for it often. And yeah, you know, we're going to have plenty of time together here. We're going to be here every week and we can talk about, there's so many interesting stories about this, right? Like what do you do? Like, should you share toys? What do you do? Like all of that stuff. There's so many great topics, but
well, before we get on to anything else, and let's recap. So Halloween is coming. The reality of it is there will probably be cries about candy or fairness somewhere in there, or costumes, fighting over costumes, or hating the costume that you picked, or changing the costume 10 billion times. There are big feelings around Halloween. It's exciting. What might parents notice, you know, when things are starting to move astray? How's the kid going to look?
Well, I think what's important is believing in our kids. Like, I think, first of all, just like listening. Like, if a child says they are so excited for Halloween, and I think this happens a lot too, like they'll go out to go trick-or-treating and then immediately they're like scared, you know, and they've been bugging you all week to go, right? And then they get out. And the parent is like, I've spent all this money on a costume. I just spent like 2 hours with you screaming at me about like not making the right, you know, whatever, bow in your hair. And now here we go. And like 30 seconds later, you just want to go home. Right.
Yeah, that's annoying.
But that can happen, right? I mean, how many times have all of us been like, I'm so excited for something. And then you're there and you're like terrified, you know? It can feel really overwhelming and out of control, and all the kids screaming and all the lights and, you know, the different houses and costumes. And so for younger children, I think just really allowing them that fluidity to love it and to hate it and everything in between, right? And then there's kids who are going to be feeling like sensory issues of overwhelm of, again, the lights and the itchy costumes. And, you know, some kids are super sensitive to that. Yeah. Right. So, and then of course candy, right? All the sugar and all the craziness and all the food coloring and all that stuff that, you know, sometimes can feel a little tweaky. So, I think that just if your child loses it for whatever reason, it would be a cool exercise to maybe not try to fix it, but to really care, right? So it's not like I'm not going to fix it and I don't care, but it's also not like, oh, like, let's fix that right away. It can be really about co-creating the solution with your child. Like,
so it's more like, I see that. I hear that. I can see why you're upset, you know.
Yeah.
What else might you say?
Well, that's a good question, because it's actually less about what you say and it's more about your energy being with them. And in fact, we advocate saying as few words as like humanly possible. So we really like to suggest that the most, you know, when I first started learning how to stay listen, I like kind of didn't know what to say. And I remember Patty Whipfler, who's the founder of Hand in Hand Parenting. I think it was Patty. It was somebody from Hand in Hand. I think it was Patty saying to say oof, like OOF. And I was like, oof? Really? So my whole first month I was trying to learn stay listening. Like my kids would be like, I hate you. And I'd be like, oof. But it was actually like a great way in, you know.
I like it. I'm going to try that.
Yeah. It's like somebody just punched you in the gut, right? Which is what it feels like when your child is crying. It's like, oof. I think that's where we'll leave you for this week with oof. And happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
We wish you the best of luck on this terrifying evening of joy and fun. There's magic to be had.
Enjoy. If you guys need more resources for Halloween, there is tons on our website about how to set limits with candy, about the fears that might come up on Halloween night. If you put Halloween into the search box on the website, you'll find it. And we can also link to it on the Hand in Hand podcast page. And we'll leave some links for you in the show notes.
Okay, great. And please subscribe and also leave us a review and a rating. All right. We will see you next week. We'll continue to talk about lots more fun things.
Happy Halloween.
Bye.